Okay, we welcome all our viewers and listeners on MPC on our program, The Big Conversations. Today we've got a young man who has got a very, very sharp mind. We would like to discuss politics of Zimbabwe and his politics, about himself. Welcome, Mr. Vundla.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, Mfokankala. And
Okay,
all
no.
who are watching, thank you very much for having me on the show. Ngiyabonga.
Excellent. Maybe briefly, if you can just tell the people who you are.
In brief, it's very important as you are asking me. We are Bantu people. More so Singamanguni, some of us. So in our culture as Bantu people and as Africans and Southern Africans, it is important to introduce yourself to people so people know who you are exactly and who this gentleman is speaking to you. So this young gentleman that is speaking here, mina igama ngikhe Sankara Vundla. Isilile Nkosi, elomlomo wagcwalela ngumfula, umqali wesiziba, the young commander, the walking encyclopedia, okaxhekwana, okacheba, unkosi phathise mayiphathise inkosi iphathisile, iphathise emavendeni, iphathise konsingo, iphathise kongayaza, yimina ngahlanganisa izizwe zabensundu labelungu ngobolo, okatwa. So I'm a child who was born from the Vundla clan, the Koi sons, and my mother is a vendor, abakonsingo, kongayaza. So I'm a Zimbabwean by nationality, though I'm residing in the UK at the moment because of situations pertaining to our country and the land that we come from. But most of all, I'm an African, a proud one.
That was a nice introduction. Thanks a lot. Maybe if we could start by looking at the Zimbabwean political landscape. How would you assess it right now?
Maybe when I was introducing, I forgot to say that I'm the National Secretary of Organization and Mobilization within Zapo. So when we speak about our country, it gives me a bit of authority maybe to speak on the political situation in our country. As you asked me, Mfokankala, Zimbabwe, the political situation in Zimbabwe hasn't changed from what it was like in 1980, 1990, 95, in 2010. It has always been the same. It has always been an oppressive regime that plays one group against the other to benefit at different times. And surely and truly, in different times, people of Zimbabwe have felt this oppression, this oppressive regime. I may start maybe by saying the people of Harare, and the people of Chitungwiza, and then the people of Mashonaland West, and the people of Manicaland. They were the first people to face the brutality of ZANU-PF in 1980 when they won the elections. Joshua Nkomo even spoke about it and compared to Lord Carrington and said the elections were not free and fair because many Zappo cadres were killed in Mashonaland West, and many Ndabaningi Stole followers were killed in Harare, in Chipinge, in Maswingo, and Manicaland. They were the first ones to feel the brutal force. But probably the people who had felt the hand of ZANU-PF, the brutal hand of ZANU-PF the most, are the people of the Western province, where we call Matabeleland today. During Kukuraundi, a tough period that went on for over 4, 5, 6 years, where people were butchered like animals. Even just speaking about it is not something that is easy to speak about, you know? But we not talk about the violence. We can even talk about just their wealth that was taken from them, you know, and how they were treated. We have a generation of fathers, I always say, my fathers, some of you, Babonkala, fathers who, I think maybe me and you were still a young boy or a teenager when these things were going on. But our fathers, they have it's a special generation, you know, because they went to war, and then when they came back to war, they lost their positions in the army when ZNA was realigning. And then all of a sudden there was Kukuraundi. Their dignity was taken. Their wealth was taken. Their names were taken because some changed names. They lost their ways of employment. And then came 1989. They take the factories. They moved them to Harare. Our fathers were forced to cross the borders and go to South Africa and work in the mines. Their relationship with our mothers, which were already severed by Kukuraundi, went on to be severed further, because they were not there. So a lot of us were raised by single mothers, abo auntie. Some of us don't even know who our fathers are. They have their own story that has not been told, you know, as people who fought half of the liberation struggle of our country. So our province, you know very well, you felt it, I'm sure you saw it, the brutal end of ZANU-PF. And then we move on later on, the marginalization and jobs and the nepotism and the discrimination that we faced in that region. But I can talk to the people in Mutoko and people in Murewa who had the long hand, short hand massacre under ZANU-PF as well. They have their own story, and they came to Congress, as our Zapo Congress in 2016. And that they told us, you have to hear it to believe it. So all the regions in our country is still the same system, but it just changes. ZANU-PF is not the ZANU-PF that used to put people's pictures on the TV and say we're looking for them. You know, just as the mafia evolves, the mafia doesn't kill people in the street anymore. You know, now it is the pocket of the judges and the pockets of the lawyers and so on and so forth. They do their things in silence. So ZANU-PF now is a different regime under Emerson Mnangagwa. There's a bit more freedom of speech, but still people are being oppressed, you know. Those who know, they know. So that's the situation. I don't think anything has changed in Zimbabwe. The only thing that I can say has changed is the people are desperate for leadership. The people are ready to be liberated. The people have had enough. As a collective, before it used to be small regions saying, this government is not good. The other region will say, no, but they are fine. Now everybody is feeling the pain and everybody wants this government to go. This was shown when we removed Robert Mugabe. It's just we removed one puppet for another puppet. But yeah, we just lack leadership in the country and people are ready to unite, irregardless of background and so on and so forth, especially the young people, because the older generation has passed on. You know, we have a different school of thought.
Yeah, you say things haven't changed politically in Zimbabwe. All the factors which were there in 1980, they are still there. Yes. But we know that there have been, let's say, the emergence of the MDC in 1999. There have been a change within ZANU-PF. So yes. Do you mean to say that those didn't open any political space?
They did. They did open political space because, again, when we talk about Kokurahundi, it was about achieving a one-party state. So the emergence of MTC destroyed that one-party rulership. Many political parties have come along, even regional political parties, secessionist political parties, or whatever you want to call them, have had the space now to open up now and start to campaign. So yes, we've got that freedom, but those who know the elections were rigged in 1998, 2002, you can go on, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, you will never, like Robert Mugabe said himself, well, now he's gone. I don't know, maybe things might change. But Robert Mugabe said, Zimbabwe was won by the gun. You cannot win it by the ballot box. So we saw MTC win elections fair and clear and square. Yeah. But ZANU-PF used this brutality to contain the people. And so it will go on.
Yeah. You said you feel that now the ground or people are now ready to be liberated. By who?
That is the problem. The problem that we have in the country now is people who are ready to be liberated, people who are thirsty for liberation, but there's nobody to liberate them. You know, it's like, I can't explain it. It's a very weird, peculiar time. You know, we have a lack of leadership. If you look in our political parties, you've got MTC. I can't tell you how many MTCs are there.
Yeah.
One case Coupe, one case Chamisa. I'm telling you, probably before the elections come 2023, there will be another new MTC. You look at Nkosana Moyo, sound policies, but lacks, it doesn't inspire confidence in the people for some reason. People are not willing to follow him. You look at Zapo, the best ideological party in the country, but again, somehow the people are not following. I think we lack an enthusiastic, charismatic leader in the country who can lead people, you know, who can have a direct vision, what he wants to achieve. Fidel Castro said something. He said, a leader is somebody who is able to take people with different opinions, different feelings, and different values and different languages and lead them towards one common goal. That was what Fidel Castro said. And Ubabu Joshua Nkomo was that type of leader. He could lead, it doesn't matter where he goes. In Tonga yake, he got it from a Shona land, was given by the Shona people. He was respected everywhere in the country by everybody because he was one of, he led the Bukalanga society, for example. People started thinking he was a Kalanga himself, but he was a Sutu man. But that shows his leadership quality. Yeah, we are lacking leadership from our politics. If you ask me right now, and you ask the young people, me, again, Castro said, the people who are an inexhaustible well of information. So when you spend time with people and you talk with people, people who want ZANU-PF gone, but nobody knows who to vote for. Yeah.
Okay, I would like to talk to you about your party ZAPU, but before that, how would you define or describe what we call the Zimbabwean problem? Why is Zimbabwe what it is politically?
The Zimbabwean problem is unique, you know, in the world. I want to remind people that we fought the longest war in Africa. The longest liberation war in Africa was fought in Zimbabwean soil. We started independence early. We took the country later than Nigeria, Zambia, Angola, all of them. Including Ghana and the other countries. Our people were tired of war. Our people know what war is.
Yeah.
That's when we thought with independence, Kukurawundi came. You know, the wounds of Kukurawundi, you can still feel them today towards our elders. I've spoken to elders before, but Tala, let's try and do something. And they'll tell you, my son, I don't want to hear anything. I've seen too much in my life.
Yeah.
You know, so our people know war. If you notice, South Africa is different. South Africa is always wanting war because they didn't fight so long, you know. They're still angry to spill blood. But those who've spilled blood and seen blood have seen the brutal effects of war. They understand. We value peace in Zimbabwe. We want peace in our country. You know, we are fortunate that we have not had militias like Renamo in Mozambique and stuff like that. You know, we do value peace in our country. But again, our people are very resistant. If you notice, we resisted the Rhodesians for all those years. We've resisted ZANU-PF. Doesn't matter if the dollar expires, we'll find ways to make money. Doesn't matter what happens, we'll find ways. We're finding ways to live and survive. But it's a unique problem. Now the problem is, we have a problem with tackling the government. We have ever since Ubabu Joshua Nkomo left, maybe Tsvangirai was all right until a certain point. He lost his touch with the people towards the end. We lack somebody who can challenge the government on behalf of the people. I also say, and I said this to Ubabu Dabengwa before, Zimbabwe won't be taken by a political party. Mugabe was right. It is not the electoral votes, no. It is the people power that will remove ZANU-PF. Like in the case of Burkina Faso with Blaise Compaoré. Blaise Compaoré was kicked out of parliament on a helicopter because the people marched and the soldiers turned against him. That is the situation. But in order to achieve that, you need somebody who can lead people. We are a bit divided, again, because we do not understand our history. We have a big identity crisis in our country.
Yeah.
I need to repeat this again. We have a huge identity crisis in Zimbabwe, which causes people not to find themselves as Zimbabweans, not to feel as Zimbabweans, not to feel the value of working together. Because if you notice, Zappo was built on different groups of people. There was only one Ndebele person in Zappo. The rest was Sutu. Manika was the majority. I think there were 3 Manika people. Kalangas, Karangas, Vendas, Xhosas, and so on and so forth. So we have an identity crisis in our country. Like, for example, the best footballers in Zimbabwe, they come from the Western province, but not Gobulawai, not Ekwanda. They come from Binga and Wange. It produces the best footballing talent. Amatonga produced the best talent in Zimbabwe. You can look at Peter Ndlovu, Atam Ndlovu. He go even in Gobulawa, Panem Ziligazu, for the place called Ematongen, because we wanted to pay tribute to those people who have given us this. Now you have Marvelous Nakamba. He's also a Nambian from that province. So once we start to understand who's who, You've got Zimbabweans, Ndebele people who speak Ndebele, who'd rather say I'm from South Africa than Zimbabwe because they don't feel the identity. They don't feel as if they belong in the country. So we have a huge identity crisis. Once we resolve the identity crisis, it will help us going forward. But again, like I said to you, it is the leadership, my brother. It is the leadership. We need leadership. And when we're talking about ZAPU in particular, I've always said, if we could win a seat in parliament and then show good leadership, using that seat and show people what we can achieve with that seat, it will take us away.
Yeah, you have raised a very interesting issue of the identity crisis. What do you think has caused that identity crisis in Zimbabwe?
You see, it's very interesting for Sankara. Thank you very much for the question. Because we didn't have this problem until 1980. Zimbabweans always knew who they were. I mean, the white people tried to mess up our identity by moving us. When they were moving our chiefs and to different places. But even then, when we moved, like for example, me, Vundla, but I'm not a Kalanga. I'm a Khoisan. We just took this, but our people always reminded us that we were Khoisans as Tetelity, and so on and so forth. So we knew who we were. In 1980, Mugabe did a very funny and a very clever thing. He took all the people in the Eastern Province, Northern Province, some Western Province, Central Province, called them Shona people. But these people are not Shona people. The majority of people in Zimbabwe are Karanga people. They are the majority. Robert Mugabe knew it. That's why he said Kalangas are uneducated, because he knows Kalangas are actually one of the most educated people. If you look at the positions in Guabulawayo, in South Africa, MTN is run by Kalanga people, the Moyos. They are very smart people. Yes. So people knew who they were. Joshua Nkomo knew who he was. He took Umamuma Fuyane, the daughter of Umakwekwe Fuyane, and so on and so forth. We knew who we were until we came to 1980, when Robert Mugabe said, and Ndebele women are only beautiful because the Inkosum Ziligas Gamashobane stole all the beautiful women from the Shona women. When Robert Mugabe said we sold the land for sugar. When Robert Mugabe said we raided the cattle, all untrue information. And then when Robert Mugabe said everybody who lives in Matebele land is Ndebele, which is untrue. The majority in Matebele are Kalangas. We've got vendors. Actually, in Western Province, we've got the most diverse province in the country. You know, we've got over 13 different groups living in that province. And then everybody else is a Shona, so he could win the votes. Now you've got Manika people thinking there's a Zulu and Karanga people and so on and so forth. It was ZANU-PF, and ZANU-PF perpetrated that lack of identity. For example, if you look at the news, it's Zezuru, but Zezurus were not the majority people. The Ngungu, it was Zezuru on ZBC. His own traditional thing. He never respected other people's cultures. And as a result, the other languages died. If you look in South Africa, I've lived in South Africa, I've been to Limpopo. You've got places where it's Shitsonga, places where it's Venda, places where it's Pedi. Everybody is respected, even in the radio station. Whereas in Zimbabwe, it became a Ndebele Shona thing. And then said, Ndebeles, you are in minority. Shona were a majority. And so on and so forth. And then we had this problem, and so on and so forth. Sorry. He said, Shona, you are a majority, Ndebele, you are a minority. This is why Ubabu Joshua Nkomo cried at George Silundiga's funeral. You can see the videos on YouTube. And he said, can we please, and he said, can we please stop this thing of saying majority? When we said we are fighting for a majority vote, we meant Zimbabwean majority vote, as Africans majority vote, not Shona, not a Shona Ndebele majority vote. I'm very sorry for calling me. So that was the case with identity in our country. A lot of people don't know who they are. Like I said, if you recognize that the Tongas play great football, maybe would invest a lot of money in Binga, in sports and football and soccer, because they've been giving us a lot of that football. Do you understand what I mean? And then it gives everybody a sense of belonging in the country, in the nation that we call Zimbabwe today. Zimbabwe has got a dignity in its tradition because of King Umziligas Gamashobane. Now we have got kings from South Africa who visit, who respect that kingdom, because that kingdom was a fierce kingdom. Kingdom, and maybe if people knew that Lopengula didn't sell the land, rather he disappeared because he chose not to be caught, rather than get his head chopped off like all the other kings were being killed. He took all Zimbabweans, Amatonga, Lamashona Ongube, Otobela, and Bapetli Zulu did something that was amazing and killed white people and disappeared. Even till today, they cannot find him. If maybe we identified our history like that, then people will find pride in who they are. I teach Ndebele to kids, my brother, and this is how I teach it to my children. And my children, I teach even to Shona children in Australia. One of my child, 100%, is a Shona child, a Vengeza by Senem, but she loves Ndebele culture and she appreciates Zimbabwean. You understand what I mean?
No, that's very, very interesting. Yeah. You said you are a member of ZAPU, and you said your portfolio is the National Organizing Secretary.
Yes, Deputy National. So
I'm Deputy National Secretary, Organizing Secretary.
Yeah.
So as the Deputy National Organizing Secretary, what is your role?
So my role is to ensure that the membership of the party grows. It's also to ensure that we keep a good database and a system that we know how many members we've got. It's also to preach the gospel of Zapo.
The volume is now a little bit low.
Okay, sorry. It's also to build a database for the party, to preach the gospel of the party to people and recruit people into the party. That is my responsibility. And also to have a knowledge, as I'm responsible for Europe. So to know, set up branches and know how our structures are standing and a knowledge of our membership within Europe. And usually that membership is the one that makes the decision-making of the party, because within Zapo, decision-making is made within the branches. So it's to encourage people to come into the party and make decisions and so on.
So when were you elected or selected for this position? So
interestingly, when I got into the NEC, so I started as a deputy secretary of deputy youth secretary, youth vice chair here in Europe, under Zeti, who was my chairperson, who helped me a lot in learning my politics. And then I went on to be in the PC as secretary of policy and strategy. The PC, provincial, should I say, the leadership committee of the party in Europe. So I worked there. Then I went into the NEC, which is the national, which is with Oba Butabengwa, Future Surveillance. Initially, when I was elected in the NEC, my role was secretary of policy and strategy. That was my role, and I was the national secretary in that role. And I served in that role for just under a year. Maybe about what I did, for example, the manifesto in the party and so on and so forth. I played my role there. And then a year, just after a year, and the Central Committee decided to reshuffle me into organizing and mobilization. And that's the role that I took on and that I'm holding up and until now.
Oh no, that's very good. So
thank you.
Now, being in your position, it seems you know almost everything which is happening in the party in terms of the structure, in terms of membership.
Yes.
So how would you assess the state of the party right now?
As I started, it was very important that when I introduced myself, I said, so, I'm a very honest person. I'm a straight talker, and I've always built my relationships with people by being a straight talker and telling it. The Bible says the truth shall set you free. And in sin to say to, they say, so I would like to be very straightforward and very honest. I was reshuffled into this position. Like any football player, I coached football for 10 years. Again, so how I run my politics is like a football team, you know. I see politics as football sometimes. So as a football player, you may prefer to play as a central striker, center forward, but your manager might think, no, for the purpose of the team, let me put you as an attacking midfielder or as a right back or something like that. You understand? So yeah, I was putting a position that I wasn't particularly comfortable for reasons why I told Babu Tawengwa. But in politics as well, you must be willing to do whatsoever it is for your party and for your people and for your country. So wherever you put me, I'm happy to work. So going forward, just to explain, I would say that as a party, the state of the party at the moment is not in a good state. I think people do know, for reasons which I will mention. We lost our leader, Ubabu Dumiso Tabengwa, the commander-in-chief, in December last year. And Ugufa Aguplanwa. It's not something that you plan. It's not something that we were expecting. You know, we had a congress that was planned this year in August. So we knew that the leadership term was going to finish. Even my term, it was supposed to finish in August. So at the moment, I'm doing extra time. Think about it like that. We're just waiting for Congress to come along maybe next year. We are just looking at the situation with Corona. Again, Corona is not something that anybody had planned, you know, it just came along. So talking about the political, the situation of the party at the moment, seeing as we lost our leader unceremoniously, we've had to have a standing leader, Nuba Mabuga, who's been holding place as a holding chair for the time being. We are having to restructure our provinces and our districts in order to build for the Congress. The Congress couldn't happen, again, partly because of the funeral of Ubabu Tabengwa. Also, secondly, because of the coronavirus, you know, the situation in the country. Here is worse than probably in Zimbabwe. So we're still building the structures of the party. But if I'm being honest, having assessed Europe personally, in my role, which is my position, which is to build the membership of the party, I am not happy with the growth of the party in Europe. In South Africa, it is growing better. That is my assessment. Zimbabwe, we gain ground here and there. But in Europe, I am very worried about the growth of the party, of the party in Europe. And this is the constituency, or should I say the province, that I am responsible of. So I will speak authoritatively on that part. I can't speak so much about other provinces. You'll have to speak to my colleagues whom I work with, who work very hard, by the way. Our department, we work very hard. We have been trying our utmost best. And Ubabuta appreciated our efforts by the time he was here. He worked closely with us to try and build the party.
We know that ZAPU was revived, let's say 2008, 2009, by Dr. Dumiso Tabengwa and others. What does it have to offer that other opposition political parties do not have?
There's one thing about, there's two things about ZAPU. I would say there's no other political party, hands down, in the country has. Number one is the history of ZAPU. Historically, you cannot challenge ZAPU's history. Nobody can challenge it. And that's why Mugabe, till today, ZANU-PF will never give us our documents and all the things they confiscated, because it contains all that history and that legacy of the party. ZAPU helped not only Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe took so long to be liberated because we were busy liberating other countries. You know, we helped other movements all across Southern Africa to liberate themselves. And Kukurawundi happened as a result of us trying to help Umkhonto weSizwe and ANC liberate themselves. So the history of ZAPU is something to offer that no party has. Number two is the political ideologies of the party. If I notice the people who join ZAPU, usually I call them Trotskyists and ideologists, philosophers. It's people who study politics and who want, who have shrewd political ideology, who know how. It's usually Pan-Africanists and socialists and so on and so forth. Yes, ZAPU, the name is Zimbabwean African People's Union, which means it's a union of the people of Africa and Zimbabwe in particular. So we have different people. We've got capitalists within ZAPU. We've got communists within ZAPU. We take everything. We've got Zioni within ZAPU. We've got Amakutaramari. We've got President Christ. We've got everything in ZAPU. But the ideologies of the party are so sound. It is what attracted me to the party in the beginning. It is the political ideology that will take Zimbabwe to another level. Unfortunately, the political ideology has never been given a chance. Has never been given a chance to be implemented. ZANU-PF has taken some of the ideologies here and there, but you know what they do is they do take the ideologies, they take the money with it when it comes with it. So yes, the ideologies of the party.
So what is ZAPU's ideology?
ZAPU has a Pan-Africanist, nationalist, and ideology. When I talk about Pan-Africanist ideology, I would say when we look at Africa, we want a united Africa. We want Africa to have its own military, to make its own decisions on finance and so on and so on and so forth. And even just our own criminal justice. We want a united Africa. That's what we want. Ideas of Joshua Nkomo, Kwame Nkrumah, and Muammar Gaddafi and so on and so forth. And Thomas Sankara, those are the ideas that we're talking about, lifting Africans as a whole. Also, when we talk about nationalists, we're a country that we believe in a united Zimbabwe. This is why, if you look at the constitution of Zapo, its constitution is very simple and it's very easy to change. Zapo, you can change anything within Zapo. Even in inkunzi emnyama leli ngayintshintsha. You can change anything, but one thing you can't change within Zapo is its name. Because this name was shredded blood. Kwafunga abadala ngesintu, we say abadala bafunga amajoy, but this name shall never be changed. Ceremonies were done for this name, that we shall never change this name. So the reason why you can never change the name, because the ideology of the party is embedded within the name. It's Zimbabwe, the whole country, Africa, the whole continent. The people and you as a union is a union of the African and people and Zimbabwe as a whole. Once you change the name, it's no longer ZAPU anymore. And you can change anything. You can change maybe some of the ideologies, but the name must remain the same. And the name will always guide the principles of ZAPU. It's like a foundation of ZAPU. So the ideology of ZAPU now, when I'm talking about Zimbabwe, ZAPU wants to build a sustainable Zimbabwe. We want to take, when we talk about land reform, there needs to be another land reform, because the land now is in the hands of criminals. It went from white criminals to black criminals. There are people who are landless. I'm speaking of my grandmother who lives in Insuza, Ekangeni, with elephants. They cannot farm in that land. It is not sustainable. They are living like animals. Yes, we are Khoisans, but they don't even allow us to move. They just want us to sit in a place with elephants. So there's a land reform whereby Mugabe's CIOs took farms in Matebele land, in Manika land, in Mazoe. People from Mazoe farms, they're now living on mountains. There's a land reform that we must do. We have got a different approach when it comes to farming, when it comes to controlling our minerals and so on and so forth. I would just talk maybe two things that for me, they are the ones that hit the spot for me. The education system, for example. Our education system in Zimbabwe and Africa as a whole is not beneficial for our people. We have this mindset of saying a child who doesn't do well in grade 7 is dull, because he cannot do mathematics and science and he cannot do Macbeth. I don't understand why in this year, when we've got Black Lives Matter and we've got an African consciousness movement that is going on in the world, that we're still teaching Shakespeare in Zimbabwean schools, when we've got people like Chino Achebe, new writers like Ndabaningi Skoko who wrote great books. Why are we not studying those books in our syllabus? Right, I'm not going anywhere there. Our belief within ZAPU is we must have contemporary education from grade 1 to grade 7, which is to teach children simple mathematics, how to calculate, subtract, add, and divide. And then you teach children how to speak, to write, and to read. Most importantly, to read and to write. Then it's your language in your local area. This is the emphasis. In your local area. So if you live in Pinga, your child must be learning everything in Tonga. And then the second language is Nambia. They can choose between the second languages. And then you have English, which is a language that would teach nationally, because it is important, of course, when they're traveling and they're going to represent us in the world. They can use this language to hear even when people are speaking bad. You know, it's not just to honor English people. It's to our advantage as well.
Yeah.
So it's to teach kids in their language. When they get to grade 7, we changed the syllabus. We stopped this thing of sending kids who are gifted in arts or who are gifted in building. We've got great builders in our school, in our children, great farmers who end up wasting 5 years of their education. Form 1 because they can't recite Macbeth. Those things don't benefit them. It does not benefit our country either. The kids, what they are learning for or what they're studying for, most of them want to be pilots. How many planes do we have that are running in Zimbabwe right now in Sankara? It is not for the immediate needs of the country. We need to be training our young kids, put them in schools where they can learn building from Form 1.
Yeah.
So when they go to university now, they are learning the technical side, the science of building, but they have done all of this from Form 1 to Form 4, farming, even working in mines, mining, because we want to have our own gold being designed and made in Africa, in Zimbabwe. So we don't give them raw materials at a cheap price and they sell us these diamonds for our white weddings, again, by the way, that we pay big money for these diamonds.
Yeah.
We must be training our young people to value our earth, which is our natural resources, from a very young age. And then we, again, when we talk about languages, every region must have an educational system that is based on a 3-language system. That goes also into the government offices, the hospitals, the schools. If you are in a place in Cholocho, speak Kalanga, please, and Debele only there. You don't come there speaking Shona. The person who's working there doesn't speak Zezuru. You must be fluent in the language to work there. When you go into the office, you must speak in those language. That will promote national unity and national diversity. Sometimes you must force people to be diverse. If you cannot speak you cannot speak Kalanga, there will be an interpreter. We are going to have many interpreters in the country. You pay for an interpreter, you must pay for your ignorance. That's what we charge people. We must pay for your ignorance, and then now you can have your services rendered. But we want to employ local people, local teachers in their regions. So that is one I'm very passionate about. You know, just our culture, to revive that. Even the radio stations, it must have one for Pinga, one for Cholocho. Uplift those local artists, so when they come to Ezomkito, they are already appreciated within their areas. They've got their own support base within their areas. You understand what I mean? Yes. Yeah. So that's number 1. Yeah. We can talk about animal husbandry. We can go on. You'll have to.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you are very passionate about that. You know, ZAPU has got this image. I think it was the work of Robert Mugabe who successfully made it look like ZAPU is a regional party, is a tribal party. Yeah. So how is ZAPU, the current ZAPU, how is it going to change that?
You know, Joshua Nkomo said something during Lookout Masuku's funeral. He said, the young people, even though he has not been given a national hero status, but the young people shall research. The young people that shall come shall research and find out who Lookout Masuku is and what his ideas and his values were. I was one of those young people. Also, Joshua Nkomo said, these people you are teaching to shoot and to kill, there shall be the ones who shall shoot and kill you in the end. And Robert Mugabe was removed by guns. Whereas these colleagues, they were running away, being shot at by his same people he was teaching. Again, Joshua Nkomo said something. He said, the country shall not die. The country shall not die. The young people will save it. And the ZAPU status, it was reliant, you can do something about somebody, Babankala. They said stuff about Bob Marley when he was alive. Look at him now. He's appreciated all across the world. They said stuff about Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Look at them today. They are appreciated all over across the world. You can destroy a man's image whilst he's still alive. But as years go by And people start to realize, and once the pain and the inkunge, or should I say the web that is in the eyes of people is being removed, people will find out the truth. And now it is a perfect opportunity, I think, for Zapo personally, because that tribal connotation that Mugabe had, they are starting to die out now. Even amongst the people, one is just nature. The people who were tribalists are dead. If you look at the chief Kukura who did the thing, it's probably maybe Mnangagwa who's left. Shiri, Mugabe, all of them are going. Also, the people who had that mindset, Corona, the diseases and life, it took them away. The majority of the people in Zimbabwe now are young people. They are of a different mindset. You know, the way they view the country is different. I even look at the rap music. It's Shona guys from Bulawayo, Ndebele guys in Harare. It's just a pasa mix of everything. So the people are different nowadays. You know, if you look at Chinimbi's funeral, for example, it was different groups of people, young Ndebele people saying, hey, he's my boss. You know, it's different people. We don't look at each other on a tribal thing. So that thing is running away now. Unfortunately, when you talk to the older people and you bring Zapo to them, they often have those tribal connotations. But when I have worked with young people have always been like, when they do their research, because we've got technology now, it's not like when Robert Mugabe had Wi-Fi cancelled for everybody. No, everybody knew what was on ZPC. That was all. That was, again, a problem. ZANU-PF thrived on that. They made sure people didn't have access to information for a long time. I mean, Joshua Nkomo's book was there. He told the whole story, but nobody could access it. It was banned. You understand? To think of Father Zimbabwe's book being banned and not being given to children to read at Form 1, there are many lessons to learn from that book. But he banned it because he didn't want people to know. Now young people do their research in Fogakala. Even the message for Zapo, when you approach young people, you have to have something tangible. You have to speak about educational policies because they will question you these things. This is why when I speak, I can speak till tomorrow and I can speak very passionate because I deal with young people. Young people are inquisitive. Our children, Babankala, I've got a daughter. When I say don't touch the stove, the next question is why? And I must explain because it will burn you. Then I say, you know what, take the hand, touch it. And then when she sees it burns, she will never touch the stove again. So if you are preaching the gospel of Zapo, you must know what you're talking about. Because the people who are talking about in Zimbabwe now, they are an informed generation. A generation of opinions, a generation that will judge a person, can see through you. When you come and say, oh, I'm your savior. They know. This is why certain leaders in our country, I don't want to talk names, they're not getting the following they thought they would be getting. Because young people are not stupid. We can see through you. Thank you very much.
Okay, no, that's very interesting. Maybe before we finish, before we conclude, maybe if you could just tell me about your background in terms of who are your influences in politics?
Oh. Maybe I'll start outside of Zapo. I would like to end with Zapo because I'm here as a representative of Zapo.
Okay.
But outside. I would say I started my politics. My greatest influence has been Che Guevara, Comandante Che Guevara. Che Guevara taught me many things, that you can be young and brave, and you can be stubborn about your ideas and achieve anything. You know, against all odds, you can achieve. And he taught me that it doesn't matter where you come from. You must be willing to fight for the rights of other people and be willing to die for other people's rights, you know? And then I saw these characteristics in Joshua Nkomo, Nelson Mandela, and other people who were called great leaders. They were willing to die for other people's rights. So it was, initially it was Che Guevara. Then I was influenced by Thomas Sankara. A lot of people call me Sankara. They call me Sankara today, you know? Influenced by Thomas Sankara again. Another young African who had very crazy ideas. You know, he didn't want to pay back the debt to the Europeans. He wanted women's rights and so on and so things which were strange in those times. Thomas Sankara really inspired me a lot. And then I would say as later on when I grew in my politics, Jeremy Corbyn has inspired me a lot. You know, Jeremy Corbyn, one of the most ridiculed men of my century. But what a fantastic man, what a fantastic leader. What a man who spent his whole life fighting for the rights of individuals across the world. And even he didn't get nothing, but he's still happy to move on. Same as Joshua Nkomo. I would say The last one I would like to mention from outside, I visited Cuba. So when I went to Cuba, I was fortunate to live 7 doors away from Che Guevara's house. You know, yeah. So I walked past his house every day. I met the family who went to school with his children. Ubabu Tabengwa hooked me up with some connects there. I grew to love Fidel Castro. You know, Fidel Castro was a very wise leader. And then even the Cubans, they say, mucho inteligente. They say he was very intelligent.
Okay.
You know, with so many sanctions, but he managed to liberate all the countries in the world when his country didn't have anything. You know, very smart person. So those are the 3 influences I would say outside of Zapo.
Okay.
When I talk about within Zimbabwe, it was Ubabu Lookout Masuku.
Okay.
For me, it was Ukhalisa Bantu Vumindaba Masuku.
Yeah.
He was the best person I liked in Zapo. You know, he was a humble leader. And even till today, I've met so many leaders within Zapo, and no one can tell me a full 10 minutes conversation about the man, because they respect the man. They say he was such a quiet man, you know, a man of very few words. And everyone I speak to, they get very emotional. You know, Babu, I've spoken to many leaders who worked with him, who were his juniors. They say, what a great leader. So for me, he was a person who really, when I joined ZAPU, I really liked Ubabu Masuku. I even set up a book and a committee called the Lookout Masuku Conscious Group. That was the first thing I started when I joined ZAPU. Because I respected him so much. And then when I went on, I didn't like Ubabu Nkomo because of my history. Before I did my own negative stereotypes, I grew to love Ubabu Nkomo. You know, I realized a man who was humble, you know, who sacrificed everything for his country, you know. And such a great man. He had his mistakes, many mistakes, you know. I can go back, you should have took the country in 1977 when Smith offered you. But again, it's because he said, I can't take it without my other guy, Zanu. They fought as well, you know, I must respect them. I think he should have just took it, because look where we left it. But, you know, it's his ideas and his principles. He's a man of principles. And then when I joined ZAPU, it was not easy for me. This is the advice I'll give young people. You know, our elderly people, they don't make it easy for us. And maybe I would like to say to the elders, they need to be like the elders who were working with Umfogamzilegas Gamashobani. Those were the elders that I really admire, you know, Mkitiga Otebe, and so on. They were older than the boy, but, you know, they really nurtured the boy. You know, they followed the boy, believed in the boy. And in historically, even in biblically, our leaders have always been young, 19, 20, 21, 20, you know, young leaders. Che Guevara was 23. They took the country when they were 29, 30 years old. So try and mold young leaders. Good leaders mold young men. You know, they teach young men. You don't kill and destroy young men. You know, that's something that's for the elders. But for the young people, I would say, it's just our elders. They are like that. You just need to rough up some feathers. Stand up for what you believe in and you grow. So when I joined, I had so many challenges. You know me better than anybody, Babangala. You know how raw and uncultured I was. But I have grown. I'm now a man, and I'm hluzekile ngokomqondo. You know, I respect my culture and my people even more. You know, and I know how to deal with elders. I know how to speak to elders. But I would like to just mention a few people. I would like to start with Umamu Susan. You were interviewed there last week. She really, that woman, you know, it's very difficult to speak without being emotional. She really in my politics, she nurtured me, you know. When she was against me, she would support me. She said, keep going, my boys. You know, I believe in you. So that guy was different, you know. How I got the position in Zapo is a story for another day. You know, he came, he set me down, he said, Mfano Funani, you see Piskundos Funai. And I said, I'm telling you, this. He said, just talk now. It's a secret between me and him and the people who were there, you know, but, you know, it was very fun. You know, we had a very cool relationship, Minalom Tala. You know, he was like a big brother, like a father, like a grandfather, like a commissar, a commander, you know. I could speak my nonsense to him. You know, if I could ring him, he's losing to where my phone team, I was shouting down the phone. And he told me, you know how Mdala used to be, very quiet. Like cakes. I told him to very calm. And then when I started working with him, he always encouraged me. I think he saw himself. He was like you. You know, I found a you in Ubabu Tabengwa. He's always said, he was short-tempered too. He said, I always used to do stuff, and then Unkomo will say to me, why did you do this? And then he'll say, well done, my boys, well done, my boys. So he used to just do something. I want people who do something. He always used to say, you young people, you are not doing enough. You must be causing problems. Because when your age, we're going to Russia negotiating without Nkomo knowing, and we'll come and say, Mdala, we've got this deal. And that's what Tabengo wanted. And he encouraged my pragmatism because I was very pragmatic. And I felt like it wasn't being exploited. You know, he let me do whatever I want. Write the manifesto. I will see, I'll look at it. This is a good point. This is a bad point, Cakes. You can't put this. This is too much. Remove it. It's too brutal or it's too radical. We will put it on there. You know, he nurtured me. And he confided in me, and I could confide in him. And for me, you know, because I learned of his credentials, what a respected man he was in Africa. He was the most trained soldier in Africa. You know, when I first met ANC in South Africa, they phoned him directly, and my heart was beating. You know, he was so respected, even by Umkhonto weSizwe, by ANC. They respected Ubaba. So for me to find somebody, or should I say a shield or a shelter, I used to argue with people and say, well, go and ask Umdala, go and say, tell Tabengwa then. Because, you know, to be so under somebody who was so respected and somebody nurture you, you know, I learned a lot. I learned to be calm. I learned to be collected, you know, to wait upon things. Don't rush things. Don't just want things to happen like that. He taught me a lot.
You have said that you are not happy about the growth of the party, maybe more particularly in the UK, but generally also maybe the whole party as a whole. So what do you think could be done to revive Zapo to its, you know, former glory, to be a vibrant and relevant party?
I think you see, first and foremost, I must commemorate my comrades who work day and night, you know, in the NEC. And they don't get paid, you know. Some people are old. They've been fighting for this country since I was not even conceived, you know. They're still working hard for this party, elders in the party. I must commemorate people in this province and young people who sacrifice their lives day and night for this party, who are still part of this party. It's a lot of work, my brother, to run a political party because it's voluntary, you don't get paid. It puts your life, your personal life at risk, your security at risk, and your financial life at risk. And your marriage is at risk, believe you me. So it is a very burdening thing for people. I think the only thing that Zapo, we are on the right track. We are working hard. I think, my advice going forward, in order for it to become relevant, it just needs to adapt as a party. You know, adaptation. Everybody must adapt to survive. Isilo ushaka kasenzanga khona kamalandela kajama. Like he was very smart. He adapted in his ways of war. Umzilikazi, he adapted in his ways of war. Inkosi uLobhengula kaMzilikazi kaMashobane, he had adapted in his ways of war. He wanted guns and so on and so forth because he understood that time changes and people change. And in order to govern people, I told you something when I started. The people are a well of information. You must study the people on a regular basis because people change, my brother. Even just the religion in Africa is changing, you know? So if you're studying the people and you become social scientists, you realize that the people's views are different. People are not viewing tribalism as it was before. People are not viewing ZANU-PF as people are not afraid of ZANU-PF as much as they were before. They're not intimidated much. So now you have to study the people that you are ruling, but also you need to adapt in terms of technology, my brother. Technology, you must adapt, my brother. You cannot go. The reason sometimes, you know, you can't travel emakaya. It takes you 1 day to travel from Imizi. You would only had 5 meetings because we've got isintu. And speak to the people before you speak politics. You must, you know, it's time consuming. So you must be very smart. You must be adaptive in the way you work. But most importantly, Ubaba Tabengo was something that he did. He took young people, whether it was not for show, not for clout, not that people can say he had young people in his NEC, but it's because he understood something. If you want to know Have young people around you. You know what it is to win this election because you have got a representative of those people. You know, you can understand what it is that is needed by the country because the country 60% is young people, 40% women. You understand? So if you need young people around you. And Tamengo, even when people disagreed with him, this is one thing I liked about him. He was a nationalist again. He famously said there's not such thing as Shona. And I was very touched when he said it because I could see his thinking. He took young people into his leadership. When people said no, he said, okay, I'll have them as my advisors, my personal advisors, because he saw the value of having young people. So as a party, include young people, not for clout and not just for representation, but just to learn and understand what it is that the country needs and probably how to win. There's Instagram, there's TikTok. It's a different generation for it.
No, thanks very much, Mr. Sankara. It was a great honor to talk to you today on MPC.